All right, welcome back to the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro. Ron Futrell from Channel 8 in studio. You know, it's really tiresome, and it's disappointing. There's a lot of anger. All these shootings, school shootings. We continue to talk about it. We talk about Kendrick Castillo, who was an absolute hero. School shooting that happened at STEM School Highlands Ranch in Colorado. Then the week before, another hero that we talked a lot about, Riley Howell at the UNC, the Charlotte campus, I believe, college campus. Two heroes that lost their lives saving others. And it seems to be a regular occurrence. And it's getting old. And I don't want to hear from politicians anymore, because many of these politicians were not in the front lines. They haven't lost loved ones to gun violence. I want to talk to people, unfortunately, that have. These are the people that I want to talk to. And the brave young lady we have on the line with us right now, her name is Kaylan Bailey. She made the 911 call. She was in the movie theater shooting that took place in Aurora. She was 13 years old at the time. She was babysitting a young, beautiful girl named Veronica Moser Sullivan, who lost her life. And she was there, sadly, to see it all as 12 people died and many others injured. Their lives changed forever. Kaylan, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. How are you?
I am good, and thank you so much for having me. I'm glad I could be a part of this.
You bet, and I mean it when I say you're the type of people that I want to hear from. People like David Hogg, those types of people that have, been through it. I don't want to hear from our politicians, but unfortunately, I have to ask you this first question. And, of course, I want to talk about gun violence and what you think some of the solutions should be. But before I get to that, could you give people a little bit of background? I know it's not an easy thing for you to talk about. I know you testified in court. I know you were in the same room with James Holmes. Can you just give us a quick synopsis of what you had to go through that night?
In a one-word statement, honestly, the best word is terror. That's pretty much the best way I could phrase it without going into gory details or anything like that.
Right.
But it was definitely, it gave me the thought that I thought that I knew that I was not going to live to see the next day. That's the thoughts that were running through my head during that night. When
James Holmes walks into that movie theater, did you think it was just a prank? Because I've heard from other people that said that they didn't think it was real until actual gunfire went off.
Yeah, and I did think it was a prank, and that was solely due to the fact that when we got there were so many people dressed up as Batman, as the Joker, as really anything that was in association to Batman. Everyone was there for the festivities. And that's what I thought was going on when he launched the gas bomb or the smoke bomb that he launched. And I think that everyone in the theater thought that same thing, or at least that's what it appeared to me, because It was like in unison, everybody turned their bodies the same direction that he launched that. And shortly after that, not even 2 seconds later, shots were fired.
If you were in a room with James Holmes right now and you could say anything to him, what would you say?
Oh, man, that is a tough question. I don't know. There was so much I want to say. I would tell him, and I don't want to say I ever hate anybody, but I would definitely tell him that I hate him, and that I definitely think that karma is going to give him exactly what is deserved because the courtroom didn't.
And when people say, and by the way, you're in full right to hate somebody like that. I wasn't even there, and I hate people who do horrific things like that. But, I mean, when you hear life in prison, and the reason why he didn't get the death penalty, the main reason why is because they claim mentally ill. And I have no doubt anyone who wants to kill an innocent person is mentally ill. But is that an excuse for not giving somebody the death penalty, in your opinion?
I think that if it's justified, it would be a valid excuse. However, James Holmes had a whole plan. He had multiple weapons, bombs in his house. He planned this whole thing out. He had guns waiting outside of the theater door. This wasn't just an off-the-whim type of decision. He just didn't wake up at midnight and say, I'm going to go shoot up the theater. He had planned this. He waited for this night on this day at that time that he chose that theater. It was planned out, and that's the difference. No
question. I agree with you. If you're just joining us, speaking with Kaylan Bailey, she was 13 years old at the time of the shooting at the movie theater there in Aurora. Okay, Kaylan, so let's move forward now. You know what happened in Las Vegas on October 1, a horrific tragedy. So many people lost their lives. And now it almost seems like we're talking about these shootings, whether it's a movie theater or a school, a college campus, a high school, or a concert. It seems to be happening too much on it. It should never happen at all. One shooting is too much, but it seems to be on a regular basis. Now we have another high school shooting in Colorado where this young man, this hero, Kendrick Castillo, loses his life. What goes through your mind, and do you have to relive this stuff all over again every time you hear about one of these shootings?
Absolutely. I relive it even without having to hear about it. You know, there are just days where you just relive through that tragedy. And with Kendrick, I really admire him. He is my hero. He is a hero. He is the world's hero, the school's hero. He is a hero, and that's the type of people that we need. But the fact that we need those type of people, that's the problem. That's where we have failed, is the fact that we can play this guessing game where the fact that he offered his own life, is that why there are more survivors this time than there were the last shootings that have ever happened? What would have happened if he didn't offer his life? You know, would we have had more losses than
no
just
question.
him?
No question. I think there would have been more. Same thing with Riley Howard. I'm sure you would agree. We would have had more losses. Those two are heroes. Unfortunately, they risked their own lives to save others. So what do you make, Kaylan, when you hear politicians? I don't want to make this a political issue of right or left, but I'm just going to say politicians. When you hear politicians or people that support the NRA that go on TV and they say, well, the answer is more guns. We needed somebody, a security guard with a gun in that movie theater that you were in. Or we need more people with guns in schools. We need teachers with guns. Or, you know, this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't in a gun-free zone. I hear those things all the time. What do you make when you hear people talk about those things, mainly politicians that bring those things up? What is your response to that?
Well, you know what I hear when I hear all of that, all I hear and all I can think is excuses. These are just excuses to continue to put money towards something that has already have plenty of funds. We don't need to continue to put money towards paying people to hold guns just for the off chance that there might be a shooting. That doesn't even sound like humanity. That doesn't sound right at all. You're literally putting people in places to prevent shootings because they have become so frequent. And instead, we don't have to get rid of the entire gun laws. We don't have to ban all guns, but making them stricter, I'm sure that will help. And it's that where it starts right there, where people they overlook past what everyone is trying to say about how to move forward, and all they can think about is the money. That's what I think. I admire people like you and people. The Parkland school shooting. You know, people can disagree with their politics. I happen to agree with people like David Hogg and many others of what they say, and they're trying to do something about it. But then there are people that try to attack them. For example, Laura Ingraham on Fox News, who went after David Hogg and attacked his grades because she disagrees with his politics. And we see a lot of people that are NRA supporters that are going after these 17, 18, 19-year-old kids because they're trying to do something that they believe is right. And instead of trying to have a logical conversation with them, they want to insult them. And I would imagine, that has to bother somebody like you, that you know exactly what some of these kids have gone through and are going through. Of course, and it does bother me. And it bothers me most for the fact that they get to sit, I don't want to say necessarily on their throne, but in comparison, they don't ever have to worry about something like this. They have their own security guards. They have their own security measures. We, as normal human beings going about our everyday life, don't have as much opportunity, or we don't have as much resources as they do. And they can sit all high and mighty on their throne and attack us for what we want to say. But it's just the fact that we have to come to a mutual agreement, and we have to see things from each person's point of view, as far as they need to understand why we are so strong on our opinion and why we want to change the gun law so bad. But that's not us saying that we need to remove them completely. And we need to understand from their end why they don't want to remove them completely, which these are the reasons why.
And you're right. And when I look, I'm going to bring up one politician, and I think he's a very smart guy. Don't agree with his policies, particularly when it comes to guns. Let's talk about Marco Rubio. Okay, he accepts large funds of money from the NRA, and he's not the only one. Many others do. So how can you expect a politician like that to make the right choice or the right decision for the country when he has the NRA in his back pocket? See, I think that is a huge issue that needs to be dealt with.
Exactly, and that is the issue. And what you're asking about, what do I expect or how do I expect them to see the change? The thing is, I don't. and the money is the reason why. If who's going to turn down millions, thousands of dollars,
right?
If their life is not the one in danger, if their life is not the one that's going to be questioned,
Right. Now, listen, I'm not a gun expert. I've never claimed to be one. My basic thoughts are we need to look at, some gun control issues, and I don't believe in an AR-15 or an AK-47. I don't believe these types of weapons should be able to be bought by the general public. These are weapons of war. The original AR-15 was built for mass casualties. Stop it with the hunting excuses. They shouldn't be sold to the general public. In no way, shape, or form do I not think a responsible person that has never committed a felony should not be allowed to have a gun. Just not these types of guns. But I want to know what your solutions are, because I know you've probably thought about this for a long time since that horrific night, July 20th, 2012. If you were a politician that could put laws into effect right now, and it might be a loaded question, what would you want to see done? You're the politician right now. You're the one who can write things off. What do you think are the best solutions? And maybe you don't have all the solutions. I know I don't. But what would you like to see right now moving forward that you think would help end some of these horrific tragedies?
Well, I would definitely start with what you were just saying about AR-15s or just war weapons in general shouldn't be allowed to be bought by the public. That's definitely the first step, especially because in most cases, those are the guns that are being used to create these horrific acts. And if that's the first step, if we can take those out of the hands of the general public and only allow them to be used in war or by military, or if you really want to go the hunting route and use your hunting excuse, there are definitely different types of guns that you can use you don't need an AR-15 to go hunting. So there is a difference. We can make, we can set up laws, or if I was in control of all of this, of course, set it up so that different guns are allowed to be bought by different people, such as if you have a hunting reason, then you can buy a higher or a more powerful weapon than just a pistol or a 22 or whatever is just a handgun,
Sure.
But if you're buying it if your excuse is that you want to protect your household, just in case you have a burglar, all you need is a handgun for that. You don't need a machine weapon.
Have any politicians reached out to you over the years? And have you reached out to any of these other students or people that have gone through similar horrific tragedies? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Personally, no, I haven't had any politician reach out to me, or if I have, they haven't made themselves known as that. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, what was the second?
And as far as other students or people, your age, around your age, that have gone through some of these terrible tragedies and some of these school shootings, have you talked to them? Have you talked to their families? Have you been in contact with any of these situations?
Yes. Down here in Colorado, we actually have a group called the Rebels Project, and this place called the Resiliency Center. Anytime that there is a shooting, no matter where it is within the world, we do something that tries to bring support and uplift them, such as making cranes and sending those cranes with loving messages to that city of that was affected.
Right.
Just last month, I did travel to Parkland to talk to those kids down there due to the fact that there were those suicides going on. We held the Rebels.
What was that like? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I understand, you're right. There have been a few suicides from that Parkland High School, which is just atrocious. It's awful. So you're telling me you went down there and you spoke to some of those students. That is so wonderful of you to do that. What was that experience like for you?
It was great. Honestly, I feel like that experience was what put me on this route to where I am today. I did a CNN interview the other day, and now I'm here on the phone with you guys trying to make a change, because it starts with us. And I think that that's what my visit to Parkland did. Not only did I get to hear those kids' stories, because again, my situation is definitely different than theirs. I definitely don't know what it's like to survive a school shooting in any way, shape, or form, and I couldn't even imagine it.
Yeah, but I understand why you would say that, but unfortunately, there are a lot of similarities too, because you lost people you care about, of course, and you were in a horrific tragedy at the hands of a madman with a gun. So I think there are sad similarities as well. But I mean, moving forward, I have to ask you this question, because I was in a car accident, very serious one, when I was 12 years old. It took me like a year to get back into a car, or at least to feel good about getting back into a car. How long did it even take you to get back into a movie theater?
I think it was about a year, or maybe just slightly before a year, maybe like 10, 11 months. I did swear, I swore I was never going to go back to the movie theaters. I was never going to go see a movie again. Even to this day, I actually have never watched a Batman movie ever since that night.
Wow,
That is the one thing that I absolutely cannot bring myself to watch Batman at all. But I have gone back to the movie theaters, and fortunately, in this particular case, lightning doesn't strike in the same place twice, although it's not lightning, so it's very possible that it is to happen again.
And
especially after what just happened with the woman who was infatuated with Columbine and coming down here 20 years later. So
how scary is that? I mean, you have another nut job. I mean, she kills herself, but imagine all the destruction she could have done. You know, I know the FBI did a pretty good job in trying to find her and tracking her, and maybe that's the reason why she didn't do it. I don't know, but I mean, how scary is that to know that there are people out there that are mimicking some of these other school shooters?
And that is terrifying to me, and that right there, I would say, is where it starts with the mental health piece and trying to attack it head on first thing right away when there are first signs to be noticed, rather than waiting until it's too late.
Right. Go ahead, JD. You had a question. Go ahead.
Do you think that social media is a big driver of these shootings, and just the sheer desire for attention for these students, and that's for these villainous kids? Do you think that's part of why they're doing what they're doing?
Oh, absolutely. And it also falls into the piece of notoriety and everything like that. They just want their names to be heard, whether it's good or bad. And the fact that we keep being brought up, you know,
right?
It's 20 years later, and look, we're still talking about the Columbine shooting. It's about to be 7 years later when James Holm is still in the topic of conversation. So it's just those pieces of the fact that they are happy that their names are being talked about, no matter what the circumstance is.
You're right, and I think the media, and maybe I'm a part of that, the media needs to do a better job of not talking about the shooters. I've tried to do that with Kendrick Castillo and Riley Howard. The media has a responsibility to continue to do that, and I'm going to do my best. Kaylan, let me just say, you're doing a fantastic job. I'm so sorry this horrific thing happened to you, but I got to tell you what, you're doing a lot of great things for a lot of good people, talking about your story and helping others, going to Parkland and doing all the things you do. So keep up the great work. We'd love to catch up with you again sometime. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad I could be a part of this.
You bet. Thank you, Kaylan. There you go. Kaylan Bailey. She was 13 years old, sitting in an Aurora movie theater, babysitting a 6-year-old child with her mother. The mother was shot. The 6-year-old lost her life, and 11 others died that day at the hands of madman James Holmes, who will be spending the rest of his life in prison. And the reason why I wanted to speak with her today, because we just had another school shooting in Colorado. It just happened last week, Ron. It just happened. And it kills me to have to talk about these stories every week. I wish we weren't. And yes, she's right. We shouldn't talk about the shooters. We should talk about the heroes. And I'm trying to do that. And this kid...
Yeah, I wouldn't even give the shooters names. I know you did. You had to, and she did there. But, yeah, it's not a bad idea for the media just to ignore the person that did it, because part of the reason they're doing it is for notoriety. And that, by the way, creates copycats.
But another thing the media does is, since they have political agenda to push, if they are a certain race or if they do a certain thing, they release not only their name but also what their affiliation is. And so that's another huge part of why this is an issue.
You both make
because the media is leveraging this.
Yeah.
To push whatever direction they want to push.
You both make very valid points. I agree with both of you, but I'm sure you would agree we need to find out how these people get the weapons. Were they mentally ill? How can we prevent these things from happening again? And, in the case of the October 1 shooting in Las Vegas, this is a guy who had never committed a crime before. Okay, as far as I know, he didn't have a rep. He bought all of his guns legally, and he just snapped. I don't know how we stop somebody from doing something like that, but yes, going back to the gun control issue, yes, I do think there's something we could do about that. Why don't we open up the phone lines and take a few calls on this? 257-5396, 702-257-5396. Again, 257-5396, the number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation. And we really do appreciate Kaylan taking some time to come on. This is I can't even imagine how painful it is for her to have to relive this stuff every time people ask her about it, but I want her story to be told, and I think her opinion certainly matters. Again, that number, 257-5396. Let's start off with Brian. Brian, thanks for calling in. Brian, what's on your mind?
Yeah, very brave young lady.
For sure.
I have to say, when I go to a movie now, when I sit down, I take a look around the theater, and I say to myself, what would I do if somebody stood up and started doing what that absolute derelict, crazy madman did that day?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the nearest exit? What do I do? How many people are around me? You know, that's just something I do now.
But you have, that's a good thing, Brian. Keep in mind that, you know, this girl was 13 years old when this shooting happened, and a lot of people thought that it was just, you heard what she said, right?
Sure.
It was just that they thought it was a clown, just, you know, somebody just dressed up in an outfit. They didn't think it was real.
Well, it was a late night showing, and it was a premiere of a movie that week, and like she said, a lot of people were dressed up in costume,
right?
You know, for the movie, and that happens, you know, more frequently than people, you know. When you have the comic book heroes and stuff, you know, most of the movies coming out of Hollywood right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that goes on, but he's the madman that's to blame, and I want to challenge you to do something.
What's that?
I want you to try to contact Andrew Pollock, whose daughter died at Parkland Memorial High School, and have him on your show for half an hour. And I will find out how to get in contact with him if you would like.
If you can get his contact information, I will gladly have him on the show, and you could leave it, call our producer, and I will gladly do that, Brian, okay?
And the reason is he has a different perspective.
No, I know that. I've heard some of his interviews, and listen, I would gladly have him on the show, Brian. I am,
excellent.
You know, hopefully you would agree, I am open to different discussions and different, you know, that's why I have Ron Futrell on. That's why I have Danny Tarkanian on. I like getting into it with people, and I like having respectful discussions with others. The only time I ever get heated is when callers call up and call me a liberal. That's when I get ticked off. Brian, always good to hear from you. Please,
all right, guys, have a good one.
Please get me that contact number, and I will gladly have him on. Thank you.
I won't do that.
Thank you, Brian.
I'll call you a leftist. I'll go there.
I'm not that either. I'm a righty.
Own it, though.
No.
Own it.
No,
own who you are.
Own
who you are.
I will gladly own who I am. I am someone that is voted to the left and to the right. I look at it. And no, hold on. I'm answering.
That doesn't mean anything.
I'm answering your question. I think I am very fair. I think I am down the road when it comes to most issues. And I see them as they are, and I call them out as they are. And I don't care about a party. I don't care about the Democrats or the Republicans. I care about what's doing the right thing for the country. Let's take another call. Let's go to Neil. Neil, thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. How are you? You're on with J.D. Sharp, Shapiro, and Futrell. Sounds like a law firm. Go ahead.
How's it going, bro?
Bad one.
Doing good, my friend. What's on your mind, Neil?
All right, listen, Talk the Shark, the Run and Gun, the golden era of UNLV basketball, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's on your mind about this issue?
All right, listen, about this issue, I think where we need to start is we need to eliminate politics from the conversation.
In a perfect world, I agree.
And we need to, there has to be a practical approach to this. How much more gun control can we absorb? And one other comment, I think there's a certain amount of paradoxical wisdom maybe in the Archie Bunker approach to, passing out the pistols as you board the plane and then collect them when you get off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, there has to be a practical approach to it. I believe the Second Amendment is about self-defense,
Right.
Nobody endorses or condones gun violence.
Right.
But I'll leave it at that.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough, Neil. I appreciate the call. Thank you.
Go to the core of what Neil said there. If you have the right to property, and that was very important to our founders, if you have the right life, liberty, property, if you have the right to that, you have to have a way to protect those things.
And I don't disagree, Ron, but there are certain weapons that I believe that the public should not be allowed to buy.
My Glock? What about my 9mm Glock with hollow point bullets? Is that okay?
Again, that's a discussion that both sides need to have, okay? But I do believe everyone has the right to own a gun so long as you're not a felon and you're not mentally ill. I'm sure we all could agree on that one.
I would like to be able to carry that into a theater, quite frankly, with an ankle holster.
And I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that.
But I'm not allowed to.
Well, I mean, I'm telling you that I personally wouldn't have a problem with you doing that, but I'm worried about some of the other nut jobs out there.
The story would be in front of the RJ tomorrow. No. Ron Futrell takes a Glock into a movie theater.
I would lead with it. I would lead with it tomorrow on the show. Let's go to Bud. Bud, thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. How are you, Bud?
Hey, doing well. Thank you.
Sure.
Just a couple of things. I just wanted to clarify some of the information I heard from one of your prior callers.
Yes.
And, when we talked about you say it's okay for everybody to have a gun, but we start trying to differentiate which guns we think are okay for the population to acquire, okay?
Right.
When we talk about ARs and AKs and things of that nature, there's a common misinformation out there that those are assault weapons, and they are not. They are not military weapons, okay? They are similar. The AR-15 and the M1 Garand.
I get what you're saying. I totally understand. Well, let me be very generic, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't agree that any member of the public should be able to carry a gun that shoots 15 times in 2 seconds. I don't care what type of gun it is.
You can't do that. It's a machine gun. You can't.
An AR, the way you buy it legally, you can't do it. You have to have it modified to fully auto, which is already against the law.
That's against the law.
And they should have a special permit.
Okay, well, I know a rubber band could be used to turn it into that type of weapon. It is very easily done, and a lot of these shooters do use things like that.
Bump stock type thing. Yeah, and those kind of things can be illegal, and actually they are.
But the problem with that, Bud, the problem with that is that you can use a rubber band that could be used as a bump stock. We all know that.
Well, if you're creative, you can circumvent most of the laws we have for most things, and I don't know why guns need to be different.
There's certain handguns that cannot do that.
Well, let me go on this one. You talked about what weapon you really need to have. The Bill of Rights, it's not called the Bill of Needs, okay? It's the Bill of Rights. And what you don't realize, probably because the press doesn't talk about it, is the amount of people that save either themselves or someone else or their property through having these sorts of weapons at their disposal. For example, an AR-15 in my house has kept people from entering my house.
I have no doubt you're telling the truth, Bud, and I am so happy that people are able to defend yourself. But in that situation, you don't need that type of weapon. There are other weapons that you could have defended yourself with other than that one. That's all I'm trying to say.
No, I understand, but you don't need that weapon to go in and shoot people in a school either. And, it's been done with shotguns, handguns, and other sorts of weapons as well.
Name me the last school shooting where there were mass casualties where the person just walked in there with a handgun, please.
Well, I'm not going to do that with a handgun. There have been several. I can't come with them off the top of my head.
I can't think of one school shooting where somebody walked in there and mass casualties where they used a handgun.
Virginia Tech was a handgun.
Okay, but how many people died?
Okay, I don't know the numbers on that.
Nowhere near as many in Parkland. Nowhere near as many in Las Vegas. There's a reason for that, because they're not weapons that were used, the same types of weapons that were used, for example, here in Las Vegas. I only got one more minute here, and then I got to take a break. Let's go to Marge real quick, and then we'll take a break and take more calls. Marge, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Hi, I'll be fast. I think one of the things that we should start looking at is when somebody starts purchasing guns, the number of guns they're getting, somehow there's got to be observance of that in the records somewhere, and maybe the person gets a call or visited and say, well, why are you buying all these guns? That's one. The other thing is that, you can buy ammunition on the Internet, and I think that that's another thing, that if people are starting to buy massive amounts of ammunition, again, I think that should be really observed. I think
I agree.
That FBI or whoever. I mean, those are a couple of ways that I think we could have some.
I agree, Marge. And you know what, Marge? And I'm sorry to cut you off because I got to go to a break here. But let me just say this: those are discussions that Republicans and Democrats need to have. There needs to be some sort of understanding on both sides. And the children aren't getting anything done in Congress. That's the problem, and it's a disgrace. We're going to take more of your calls on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN.